The CEO of one of the biggest AI companies in the world is meeting with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth today as the Pentagon threatens to essentially blacklist that company, Anthropic, from lucrative government contracts if the AI company doesn't lift its restrictions on how the military can use its technology. The Pentagon has a $200 million contract with Anthropic. And a source tells CNN that the company has concerns over two issues: AI-controlled weapons and mass domestic surveillance of American citizens. Let's talk about this with Jacob Ward. He is a technology journalist and host of the Rip Current podcast. He's also the author of the book, The Loop: How AI is Creating a World Without Choices and How to Fight Back. Jacob, the Pentagon here wants this company, Anthropic, to lift its restrictions for how the military uses its model. They want it to be able to be used for what's they're calling all lawful use. What are Anthropic's concerns with that?
Well, Brianna, this is a very unusual situation in my experience, because typically when government use of technology begins, that means that new restraints are going to be put onto that company. The companies typically, traditionally, just pull toward greater and greater capabilities, and the assumption is that the government and democracy will somehow dampen down the dangers here. What Anthropic is discovering is that they don't live in that world anymore. Suddenly they're dealing with a Defense Department that wants to be able to use their technology for whatever they want. And Dario Amodei, the CEO of this company, who has written very openly about his concerns that his technology and the industry in general could be misused for all sorts of authoritarian purposes, is specifically objecting to the possibility that we could be using this technology to surveil Americans en masse, or to create weapons that fire themselves and kill people without human intervention. Supposedly the trigger here for him in part was discovering that his work was in fact used in the capture of Nicolas Maduro through Anthropic's partner Palantir in a way that he didn't know anything about. He evidently found out about that the same way we all did. And it is this effort inside a company that is making this world-changing technology to try to impose some restrictions on that technology that now has him running afoul of the Pentagon, Brianna.
Can you talk a little bit about how AI maybe has been used for, say, controlling weapons and mass surveillance, and what concerns that usage has raised?
Well, according to the reports we're seeing, Anthropic's technology, which is the only company, by the way, that is allowed inside the most classified systems in the military, is being used for all sorts of things that it's supposedly great at, including things like cyber offense. You need to be able to exchange digital fire with an opponent in nanosecond timescales that human beings could never be part of. That's an incredible use of it. But at the same time, what AI makes possible is things like, there's technology that we've seen, research that we've seen that could turn a Wi-Fi router into an essentially a radar inside a home that could tell you exactly where somebody was at any given time. It is the pattern recognition power of AI, something that a team of people, in a vast building, or a bunch of people with headphones on in a van could never imagine. As a surveillance technology, it is incredible. In fact, it's so incredible that Dario Amodei actually wrote recently, he said here, "Powerful AI looking across billions of conversations from millions of people could gauge public sentiment, detect pockets of disloyalty forming, and stamp them out before they grow." That's the kind of concern that Amodei has here.
Unbelievable. I mean, when you talk about the possibilities here. So the way this threat would kind of operate is Axios is reporting that the Pentagon would deem that they're threatening to deem Anthropic what's called a supply chain risk. That would essentially blacklist Anthropic from having government contracts. It's an approach that's usually taken with companies that are extensions of foreign adversaries like China or Russia. If Anthropic doesn't play ball here, because as you say, they're unique in that they kind of plug into this top secret nature of the U.S. systems, is there another company that can provide those same AI services and that would be willing to capitulate on these potential human rights and civil liberties concerns?
Well, according to the reporting that we're seeing right now, Anthropic is the one that they want to use. And one defense official told Axios that the reason we are talking to these guys is because they are so good. That is the problem that the Defense Department is facing. But while you say, Anthropic is unique, it's not entirely unique, and it has some very close competitors. You have Google, you have Meta, and you have xAI, which is Elon Musk's company. All of them have, are in line for this possible contract. And at least one of them, and according to Axios, that's xAI, that's Elon Musk's company, has said they can use it without any safeguards whatsoever. They won't be bringing any of this, internal hand-wringing to it. They'll say, you go ahead and use it in any way you want. And it may be that that could cost Anthropic this $200 million contract unless the Defense Department figures out that that technology is irreplaceable truly. But at this point, the heat is on in terms of the competition technologically. And so it seems to me that this is a real pickle that Dario Amodei has gotten into. You are worried about the use of your technology. You're trying to impose what you consider some ethical constraints on it. And that suddenly could cost you a $200 million contract. This is that thing where, the rubber meets the road when you try to be an ethical business leader. In the end, we're talking here just broadly here, Brianna, about like, who controls AI and under what terms are they going to? All of these stories are basically one big story about the future of this technology and who is going to control it. And I think what could happen next is you could see somebody with fewer scruples, fewer ethical qualms, stepping up to the mic and saying, I'm going to go ahead and give you whatever you need here.
New reporting from Axios details just how tense this meeting actually could be, with one defense official saying Anthropic knows this is not a get-to-know-you meeting, this is not a friendly meeting, this is a shit or get off the pot meeting. What led to this moment? Reporting by Axios that the Pentagon is threatening to cut ties with and cut off Anthropic. The company, if the company continues to say that the military should not use their AI for mass surveillance or fully autonomous weapons. The top Democrat on the House Science and Tech Committee was just on the show. Here's her take.
Anthropic is trying to do the right thing, so far as I can tell, and put their own guardrails in, even in the absence of legislation. I think, as best I can tell, the Pentagon is trying to talk Anthropic out of doing the responsible thing.
Joining me now is one of the reporters behind all of this new detail and reporting, Dave Lawler, the national security editor for Axios. It's good to see you again, Dave. Tell me more about what you're hearing in terms of what could happen in this meeting and come out of it.
Sure. So the Pentagon is saying it is unacceptable for Anthropic to put any limitations on how they use their model. They're saying that if you're a contractor with the military, you give us your tool and we use it however we see fit. But Anthropic is saying we have some concerns. We have built our software with some safeguards in it around things, as you mentioned, like surveillance or developing weapons that fire without humans. We're not willing to drop those guardrails. The Pentagon is saying, if you won't play ball, if you won't come over to our way of thinking, we will cut off your contract. And there are a plethora of other penalties that we could apply, including this supply chain risk designation to Anthropic, to basically say that anyone who does business with the Pentagon cannot do business with Anthropic. So, a lot of brinksmanship leading up into this meeting. We've been texting with sources on both sides ahead of the meeting. They're expecting it to be not a particularly friendly occasion at the Pentagon. It should start in about a half hour, 10:30 ish. And so, I think that right now both sides are very dug in. The Pentagon says our policy is not going to change. Anthropic says our policy is not going to change. And so we'll see, what happens coming out of this meeting, whether the relationship completely breaks down.
Yeah, like the wild card factor here is like our policy is not going to change, but like we don't even know what we're dealing with AI and how it develops. Like policy doesn't apply to the thing that's changing our world as we speak. I digress. Why is Anthropic and its Claude model so important to the Pentagon?
So Claude is currently the only AI model that's available in classified systems at the Pentagon. So if the Pentagon wants to do research and development on weapon systems or wants to conduct a raid to capture the president of Venezuela, Claude was actually used as part of that operation. Claude is currently the only AI model that's available in that space. Now, we reported last night that Elon Musk's xAI has signed a deal to move into classified spaces. They're working with Google and OpenAI to try to move them in there as well. But defense officials, even though they're very mad at Anthropic, they admit that Claude is very, very good. It's very useful for them. And so they don't want to sort of cut off their nose to spite their face by blacklisting Claude. And yet, like, as we're discussing, they're so dug in on this position that you cannot restrict. We have our own protocols at the Pentagon about how we do and don't use things. You, as the vendor, don't get to tell us what we can't do with your technology. So, but again, part of the problem for them is that Claude is just very, very useful to the military.
Dave, is there an obvious or compromise or middle ground here that you're picking up, like what the Pentagon wants and what Anthropic wants to protect, like where they could meet in the middle on this?
So I see a potential solution where they keep Claude in their systems until they feel like there is a replacement that's ready to roll. And so some kind of accommodation where this tension plays out for a period of months, and then if they can't resolve it, they rip out Claude and they move Google's Gemini or some other system in. I don't currently see a point where Dario, the CEO of Anthropic, goes into this meeting and says, fine, have it your way.
Right.
He has written and spoken a lot about his concerns on these issues. And I also don't see a point where the Pentagon entirely backs down. So there may be a point where neither side is able to declare victory. They muddle on for a bit, and then they rip Claude out later on. But I don't expect, handshakes and hugs at the end of this meeting.